let me quickly take you to yet another concerning scenario that is playing out. Since President Bola Tinubu got into office, he may have run about 3 budgets, 2 major cycles, half. The one in 2023 where he met halfway, the 2024 budget and 2025. Well, it does look like concerns are dipping over the economic direction of the country. Fresh scrutiny is falling on the federal government's budget performance and the sluggish pace of capital releases. Agitations, protests, even lawmakers are having a quiet, you may not hear them, but the feelers that we are getting is that some of them are already threatening that the president should not bring the budget because he has failed to perform and release funds for what they are used to. Yeah, that is what we are hearing. Despite higher revenue inflows that we hear under the Tinubu administration, implementations remain uneven. We have residue of 2024. 2025 is still lagging. 2026 budget, as of December up to today, we have not heard or seen anything about the 2026 budget. This will be the first time since the last few years of the past administration that the budget of the previous year, which has now been, the trend is being presented in October preceding the year, will always be presented by the president, but that has not happened. It will be the first in several years. What does this mean? Let me allow quickly the chief economist at SPM Professionals and economist, Dr. Paul Alaje, who is live for us virtually, to give us a sense of what we're experiencing, whether or not we are in an economic danger, in a government that says, yes, we have a lot of revenue, yes, we have a lot of money inflow, contractors are protesting, lawmakers are silently and quietly saying, we cancel all activities regarding some of the lawmaking processes because this government has failed to do the needful. Is it the needful right thing or the wrong thing? Or this government is on the right track? Dr. Paul Alaje, thanks so much for joining us tonight. Let's tell Nigerians the truth. Are we in a problem? If you have a year where 2024 budget, you are still implementing it, 2025 budget is still in the works, 2026 budget in December, no sight of it, nothing about it. What exactly are we facing as a people?
Yeah, thank you so very much for having me. And I must say good evening to you and all the viewers around the world. The number of concerns around 2025 budget, not so long ago, the Honorable Minister mentioned that 80% of 2024 budget, which is the capital component, has been met. The question is, if we are discussing 2024 and 2025, then there are some concerns which has to do with releases. But so that people are properly educated, when you talk about capital expenditure, what are we referring to? We are referring to investments in an economy. Meanwhile, we also have recurrent expenditure, whether we call it recurrent debt service or the recurrent no debt. That is money that is spent mostly on consumption. Now, what builds a nation, the impact, the growth that we are all looking for most of the time, and the target of Mr. President, that this economy will hit $1 trillion economy in the next 5 years, if you like, by 2030, honestly, has to do with our ability to promptly implement this fiscal document, the largest fiscal document we have in Nigeria. So 2024, we've already have the gap and the carryover up to 2025. The most recent release reveals that for 2025, we might have, only 30% is what will be implemented. The instruction to carry forward 70% of the capital project, it's really, really worrisome. Because if you are doing only 30% of capital expenditure, what it means is that for at least for national, for federal, we're not talking of state, we're not talking of local government, for national contribution to the development of Nigeria, and a budget implementation, only 30%. I think that is quite small. I think Nigeria, authorities should do everything possible for us not to have a repeat of this in the subsequent year. Because what it means is that the excitement we saw when 2025 budget was passed, that certain roads will be constructed, certain roads will be repaired, that certain rails may come to the fore. Now, reducing all of this to 30%, to a large extent, infrastructure ministry ministry may be, agencies, I beg your pardon, may be largely affected. Recall that what we need mostly now to augment for what monetary authorities have been doing for a while, which is increasing rates. High interest rates already have impact on industry. If you check the National Bureau of Statistics third quarter report to let you know the impact of high interest rate on the economy. 1.25%, only 1.25% year on year is how much manufacturing grew. And this is from National Bureau of Statistics. This is the most sensitive, most critical element of our economy. So if we now have what can enhance that, and we are moving into another year, perhaps for a number of reasons that have been mentioned across pages of medias and releases, which include release of funds, not cash back, and so on and so forth. One may now ask, based on your intro, that we have said we have met revenues targets. But that revenue target, we have to be clear. What are we saying, that we have met revenue target of the entire budget, or are we saying that we have met revenue target of the expected expenditure, or are we saying that we have met a revenue target of oil sector? What exactly are we referring to when we say revenue target? That statement is really not very clear.
All right.
And not to become political, it's important for us to allow perhaps authority to shed light so that we can properly mention what it entails.
68% increase in revenue collection in taxes and revenue generation. That's largely FRS and customs and a few other agencies. Compared to 2023, that is what is reported of 2024 budget. And that happened in late 2025. For a lot of people to understand, it did not happen within the calendar, the 2024 calendar year. It means that, and when you say carry over, I remember my secondary school day where you have to repeat a class because you fail a course, or when you are in the university, you cannot graduate because you have to carry over. It does look to me that you failed in 2023, you cannot finish it up. This government carries over to 2024, and they are trying to struggle to finish up 2024 in 2025. 2025 is still struggling. What I cannot understand, Mr. Alaji, and you are the expert here, make us understand. How can you see have residue of a little bit of 2023, of 2024, and 2025 you are still having it? How, make us understand. More money generated, less capital release. He meant one thing: infrastructure problem, governance delay, and poor implementation in the capital execution of the budget. It's as simple as that, isn't it?
Exactly, but I will address a number of issues. A number of persons have said, oh, FRS and the chairman of FRS have claimed that they made 60% revenue of 2023 budget, and that if we have that much, Nigeria should have. I said, listen, FRS has done what they said they have done, and it is true. However, 2023, the total budget was between 22 trillion to 24 trillion. But when you go to 2025, that we compare with, you see that 2025 was over 40 trillion. In fact, nearly 50 trillion. And at the end of the year, when you look at order collection, loan collection, and so on and so forth, I'm tempted to say that we may be getting closer to 60 trillion. Or above 50 trillion in 2025 budget. What is that telling us? We are looking at something more than double of 2023 budget. So FRS has done well for having that kind of mileage improvement. But why is this not impacting the economy enough? That's the point. Because what we intend to inject to the economy in 2023 was only 22 to 24 trillion naira. If we talk purely in naira terms, because exchange rate is a major determinant of all of those disparities. But if we talk, you could say that FRS has tried to cover up that gap in exchange rate by getting about 60-something%. But it's not even double. Because the economy, the quality of money in 2023 is different from quality of money in 2025. So when you look at both sides, you see that we need to implement, we should have implemented the budget. And I don't think it's a responsibility of FRS to implement the budget. Their responsibility is to generate money. So the money is there. What is delaying releases? And that is why, for me, I want to come from the perspective of how do we automate release process? This is not the first time we have seen releases causing seizure in activity. Just yesterday or day before yesterday, the president, I read in the papers where the president mentioned that he's setting up a committee to help contractors that were owed billions of naira. And this is the reality. If monies don't go to local contractor, the economy cannot be oiled as we should, especially those that have something to do with infrastructural development. So if money does not come as at 20, because we have to go through procurement process, nothing stops agencies of government to start procurement process from January every year, or do procurement for the previous as soon as budget is presented. Start your procurement process, and when tender process starts, it takes some time for advert and all of those processes to happen. By the time budget is passed, you know exactly how much all of those will be. But if they will run into crisis for running these two side by side, therefore we have to go to Fiscal Responsibility Act. We have to go to the act that tells us by when our budget must have been passed. I am of the opinion that, and it's not just being opinion, what the book says is that by September or latest October, budget must have been presented to the National Assembly, not MTF report, but budget must have been presented. So if this is not done, we're going to see this gap, and this will, of course, have implication on investment in the economy. It will have implication on infrastructure. It will have implication on employment. The challenge is if you move it to next year, then you might be looking at inflation.
I need to close out this conversation now, but before we go, I know it's going to be a tough question for you. And I'm making you the lecturer here now, because in some way you're an academic, you are a PhD holder. So you should be able to rate and judge. You're an economist, and you must be able to tell Nigerians what exactly the situation is. From 2023, 2024, 2025, that's a 2.5 budget cycle that this government has handled. In terms of budget implementation, budget planning, and strategical implementation of budget, is this government a failure, yes or no?
Please, I don't like to answer yes or no question. That got me.
Okay, all right. Let me make it easier for you. Be a lecturer in this case. 10 being the highest mark, 0 being the lowest. How would you rate this government in terms of?
I would say we are around 4 to 5
in terms
of implementation. The reason is because, let me explain. The reason is because for capital expenditure, the goal of authorities, state and federal, is to implement it 100%. Especially that we had borrowed money against those things. Imagine that we borrow money, we don't now implement, and we have to pay interest on what is not implemented. So it's a cost. The cost of that budget is even beyond how much we think of. So if we have agencies of government that should monitor, especially at the federal, at the state level, that should monitor that the monies are released, and not just releasing the money. The smart for a budget is not that fund is released, is that it is implemented. And that's the reason why I would say that for the current expenditure, always you will see it 100% done. But what matters to many Nigerians who are not in civil service, who are not politicians, is capital component of budget. And we need to do that.
Thank you so much.
ASAP, so that we can have it improve right now.
Dr. Paul Alaje, thank you so much. Economist and the chief economist at the SPM professionals. Thank you so much indeed. If you hear the stories of contractors who said they've gone to borrow money, some of them are committing suicide, some of them are being, they have to sell their properties because they borrowed money to do projects for the federal government, and the federal government is not paying them back. Sad stories that you hear about the government that says we have more revenue for failing to implement capital, having capital releases into the economy. Thanks so much indeed.